What's up, guys? Welcome to What's the Point? My name is Matt. I'm your high school director, and today we're going to be talking about redemption. So grab your Bibles, open up to Exodus chapter 6. All right, guys, like I said in the intro, today we are going to be talking about redemption. And redemption is amazing. It's such a cool topic, and one of my favorite aspects about the character of God is that he's a redeeming God. And so to look at redemption, we're going to look at Exodus. I've been reading through the book of Exodus, and if you've read it before, you know that it's a redemption story. Guys, my ADD is so bad, a leaf just moved on the ground over there, and I looked at it. So no worries, even when we're not in person, my ADD is still bad, so you have that to look forward to when we re-meet up. But anyway, we're talking about the Israelites. And the Israelites are God's chosen people. Congratulations, whoever said it behind the screen. They are God's chosen people. And what happens in Exodus is that they are actually enslaved to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And some of you guys are familiar with the story. You're like, oh, I'm starting to remember it, right? And so they would work for Pharaoh, and they would have what's called a taskmaster over them. And this taskmaster would make sure that they were doing the right amount of work. So one of the most common things that these Israelites did during this time was make bricks. So using mud and straw and stuff, they would make bricks, and they would be building massive things for the Pharaoh. Now, it's kind of like the movie Elf, if you've seen it, with Buddy the Elf, and he's making the Etch-a-Sketches in the beginning, and he's cramming, right? Like, he's going fast, and the elf, or the head elf or something like that, in this scene comes up to Buddy, and he's like, how many have you made? And he's like, I've made 87? And all the other elves, stop, and they're like, bro, this guy's slow. He needs to make way more than the 87. He's like, and what does the head elf say? He's like, that puts you 619 off pace or something, right? And that's kind of how it was. The taskmasters were like that. They were like, hey, you need to make these breaks. We need to get these things done. They were the real enforcers. And so it's a really bad and awful situation for the Israelites. You can imagine, slavery's no fun. And they're enslaved. And so what happens is God looks at his chosen people and he says, hey, I'm not going to keep them here. He's like, I'm going to free them from this. I'm going to take them out of this slavery and take them far, far from Pharaoh. And so to do this, he uses a man named Moses. And some of you guys are familiar with Moses and all these things he did. Well, God tells Moses a little bit later in the story to say this to the Israelites so that they know who Moses is, what he's up to, and all these things he's doing. So in Exodus chapter 6, verse 6, we read this. This is God speaking to Moses. He says, say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them. And I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. That's the one verse we're going to be reading today. And if I were you, and I did this for me, I underlined the phrase, an outstretched arm. And I'll get to why. But as I was reading this, I was trying to understand exactly, all the pieces, right? What are all these things that are going on? And so redemption, I looked it up and what it meant way back in the Greek and all these things, right? And it literally means to reclaim. And it was often used in reference to a house or some field or some property, to reclaim that property. It was like someone's property and they lost it somehow, and now they need to reclaim it. And so that's literally what redeeming is. But redeeming isn't just something that happens with property. It's something that happens between you and me. Between relationships, between people, between friendships, family, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, all these things, right? Redemption is something that happens on multifacets, right? On all these different levels. And here's what's cool. Because I was thinking about I was reflecting of times of redemption in my life, of moments where maybe I had to apologize to someone or someone apologized to me and our friendship was redeemed. Because for a while it was broken, right? It was broken, and then once we apologized and we worked through whatever was in between us, that friendship was redeemed. And I thought about how this is different from God and my relationship with God. With people, there's a risk that redemption won't happen, right? That if I do something to wrong you and I ask you for forgiveness, there's a risk that you could say no. Or there's a risk that you'll say, yeah, I want to be friends again, but not really mean it. And what's cool is that that is not the case with God. There's absolutely no risk. He is someone who wants to redeem you. He's a God of redemption, and he wants to bring you back into communion with him. He wants to fix whatever's broken. He wants to heal you, and that is what redemption is for him. Now, I had you underline with an outstretched arm. And why this is important is because it shows active redemption. And let me illustrate this. So think about your phone. If you had your phone and you had some really embarrassing text messages on it, right? Like you're texting your mom, and like instead of it just saying mom, it says like mommy or something like that. And you're like, thank you so much for cutting my PB&J in a heart shape today. And you're like 16, and all your buddies are like, why is he texting his mom, right? And you have those text messages on your phone, and then your phone's unlocked, and someone grabs your phone. You can definitely, like, from where you're sitting at the lunch table or whatever, say, hey, give me my phone back. And that is redemption. You asking for your phone back. Hey, give it back, right? But there's a difference between that and what if now, say I'm that kid, say I'm that guy. Now, if instead of me sitting there saying, hey, give me my phone back, I'm standing up, my arm is outstretched, and I am like walking/running after you to get my phone back. Do you see the difference? Do you see how in one case, I'm inviting redemption, and in the second case, it's already in motion. I'm already going after you. I'm already trying to get it back. You see, that's what God does. God is redeeming God, but more than that, he's a redeeming God with an outstretched arm, showing that redemption is already in the works. He's already trying to redeem you. Objects, they don't have a choice whether or not to be redeemed, right? That house, if it were to be reclaimed, it gets reclaimed. Houses can't say, no, I don't want to be reclaimed by this guy, right? But people have that choice. And so, this leads us to the million-dollar question, what's the point? We know God is redeeming God from this verse and from this story. And if you're still not convinced, read Exodus, at least the first 10 chapters. Just read Exodus and get a feel for how God is redeeming God. But we know God is redeeming God. We know he wants to redeem us. So now what's the point? The point is, there's something you have that needs to be redeemed. And I'm not talking about salvation. Salvation's different. You accept Christ and you're saved. It's not something that happens all the time, right? You don't have to repeat it over and over and over. You're saved or you're not saved. But redemption is different because you can take part of yourself and give it away. You can take your heart and you can give it to something else. You can take your desires, and maybe at one point they were for God, and you wanted God to move in your life, to grow you as an individual, to use you for his will. But now your desires maybe need redeeming. Your desires are for yourself. They're selfish. You want to do things how you want to do them on your time, in your way, and if you don't want to do it, you don't do it. Maybe your desires need redeeming. Maybe your heart itself needs redeeming. You've totally given up on God. You've walked away from that. Or maybe it's your personality or your character or your identity. Maybe all of those things need redeeming, right? Maybe you find yourself trying to define who you are in how others see you, or how your boyfriend sees you, or how your girlfriend sees you, or maybe having a boyfriend or girlfriend, or all these facets of here's how my life works. And my question for you today is, what are you going to do this week? What are you going to give to God to redeem? Because I promise you, you won't be disappointed when he redeems you. And odds are you thought of something the second I asked you that question. And it's probably the first thing that came to your mind is what you need redeemed the most. So I want to ask you, this week, what are you going to do to find that redemption? What are you going to give back to God as he has an outstretched arm and he's already asking for it? What are you going to give him to redeem in yourself?